The scratching came again. It was a sound that had become all too familiar, a nightly visitor that I could not escape. Faint at first, then insistent. It started as a whisper, barely noticeable, but it grew louder, more demanding, as if it sought my attention, like brittle leaves scraping against glass. I knew that sound. It was the same every night, a relentless reminder of something lurking just beyond the window. It haunted the edges of my dreams, a harbinger of something sinister. Each night, it would pull me from the depths of sleep, leaving me gasping and disoriented. It was a sound that belonged to the night, not to the supposed safety of my own home. The walls that should have protected me felt paper-thin, unable to keep out the encroaching dread. I pulled the duvet tighter, a futile attempt to ward off the creeping fear. The fabric offered no real protection, but it was all I had. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the room. Each thud echoed in my ears, amplifying the terror that gripped me. Each rasping scratch against the windowpane was a cold finger trailing down my spine. It was as if the night itself had come alive, reaching out to touch me. I told myself it was just a branch, swaying in the night wind. A simple, natural explanation that should have calmed my racing thoughts. A logical explanation to soothe a primal fear. But the logic felt thin, like a fragile thread that could snap at any moment. But logic held no sway in the darkness. The night was a realm of shadows and whispers, where reason was easily overpowered by fear. The rational part of my mind receded, replaced by a raw, instinctive terror. In the dark, I was a child again, vulnerable and afraid, with nothing but the thin veil of my duvet to protect me from the unknown. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity as I lay there listening to the relentless scratching. The night felt endless, a dark tunnel with no light at the end. I considered turning on the light, but the thought of what I might see held me back. Sometimes the unknown is less terrifying than the known. So I lay there in the dark, with only the moonlight and the scratching to keep me company. The night was alive with sounds, each one a reminder of my isolation. But amidst the fear, a resolve began to build within me. I couldn't let this nightly terror control me. I had to face it, whatever it was. Slowly I pushed back the covers and swung my feet to the floor. The coldness of the floor was a shock, grounding me in the reality of the moment. I took a deep breath and walked towards the window, each step a battle against the fear that threatened to paralyze me. My hand trembled as I reached for the curtain. With a swift motion, I pulled back the curtain, letting the moonlight flood the room. The scratching stopped, and for a moment, there was only silence. I peered into the darkness, searching for the source of the sound. The night was still, the branches swaying gently in the wind. There was nothing there, nothing but the night and my own reflection staring back at me. Relief washed over me, but the fear lingered, a shadow that would not fully dissipate. The night had revealed nothing, but the familiar sound would return, and with it, the terror that haunted my dreams. The scratching stopped. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating. It was a silence that hummed with anticipation, amplifying the fear that pulsed through me. My senses were on high alert, straining to hear, to see, to anticipate the next sign of intrusion. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen, stretching out like grasping claws from the corners. They writhed and danced in the periphery of my vision, fueled by my own terror. Even the familiar objects of my room felt alien and menacing in the suffocating darkness. I dared not move, dared not even breathe. The silence was a living thing, a predator stalking its prey. And I was caught in its suffocating embrace, frozen by a fear so profound it bordered on paralysis. Thump, 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 thump. My heart pounded in my ears, a deafening rhythm that echoed in the silence. It was the only sound I could hear, the only evidence of my own existence in the face of the unseen terror that lurked just beyond the windowpane. I squeezed my eyes shut, as if darkness could somehow shield me from what I knew, what I feared, was outside. But the darkness offered no escape. In the blackness behind my eyelids, my imagination ran wild, conjuring up grotesque images that surpassed the horrors of reality. I waited, suspended in that agonizing limbo between anticipation and dread. Time lost all meaning. Every second stretched into an eternity, each tick of the clock a hammer blow to my sanity. The silence was a torture more exquisite than any sound. Then, a sound cut through the silence like a shard of glass. A soft, almost imperceptible sigh. It came from the window. My eyes flew open, drawn irresistibly to the source of the sound. And there, pressed against the glass, was a face. It was a face that defied description, a grotesque mockery of human features. The skin was stretched taut across the bones, pale and lifeless like old parchment. The eyes were too large, too black, burning with a cold, malevolent intelligence. And the mouth, oh God, the mouth. It was stretched into a wide, unnatural grin, revealing rows of sharp, pointed teeth that glinted in the moonlight. Section 5. Eyes like embers. The face remained pressed against the glass, its eyes locked on mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. It was a cold, unyielding stare, one that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of my being. The night was still, the silence only broken by the sound of my own ragged breathing. It was as if it were peering into the deepest recesses of my soul, feeding on my terror. Those eyes, they held a malevolent intelligence, a knowing that was far beyond human comprehension. They seemed to flicker with a life of their own, as if they were windows to a hellish world beyond our own. Those eyes, they were like embers, burning with a cold, infernal fire. The glow was not warm but chilling, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded it. It was a light that promised nothing but despair and suffering. The embers seemed to dance, flickering with a sinister rhythm that matched the pounding of my heart. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. I was paralyzed, trapped in the grip of a terror so profound it transcended all rational thought. My body refused to obey my mind's desperate commands to move, to flee. It was as if I'd become a statue, frozen in a moment of pure, unadulterated fear. My eyes were locked onto the face, unable to look away, as if drawn by some unseen force. The creature outside my window made no move to enter, but its presence alone was enough to fill me with an overwhelming sense of dread. It stood there, a dark silhouette against the night, its form barely discernible but undeniably menacing. The air around it seemed to thicken, becoming almost tangible with the weight of its malevolence. I could feel its gaze boring into me, a silent promise of the horrors that awaited should it choose to cross the threshold. It knew I could see it. It revelled in my terror. The creature seemed to feed off my fear, growing stronger, more defined with each passing second. Its eyes never wavered, never blinked, as if it were savouring every moment of my torment. The grin that spread across its face was slow, deliberate, a cruel mockery of human emotion. It was a smile that spoke of ancient evils, of a hunger that could never be sated. The face outside my window began to move, its lips parting in a silent, mocking grin that exposed those impossibly sharp teeth once more. The teeth were like daggers, glinting in the dim light, promising pain and suffering. The grin widened, stretching the face into a grotesque mask of malevolence. It was a sight that would haunt my nightmares for years to come, a reminder of the night when I came face to face with pure, unadulterated evil. Section 6. A Guttural Whisper. Then it spoke. The voice did not come from the creature's mouth, but seemed to seep into my mind, a guttural whisper that slithered past my defences and wormed its way into my consciousness. It was a voice devoid of all warmth, all humanity, cold and sharp as broken glass. "You can't hide," it whispered, the sound sending a fresh wave of terror through me. "You can't escape." Its words, spoken or implanted, echoed in the silence of my mind, stripping away the last vestiges of my courage. I was trapped, utterly alone, at the mercy of whatever malevolent entity lurked outside my window. Section 7. Paralysis. Terror, raw and primal, surged through me, rooting me to the spot. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I was a prisoner in my own body, held captive by the sheer terror of the creature's presence. The face at the window seemed to loom closer, its features becoming more grotesque, more inhuman the longer I stared. The eyes, those burning embers, seemed to bore into me, stripping away my defences, leaving me bare and vulnerable. I wanted to look away, to break eye contact with that horrifying visage, but some unseen force held me captive. It was as if the creature's will was superimposed over my own, controlling my every thought, every action. Section 8. Gone. Then, as abruptly as it began, it was over. The face at the window vanished. One moment it was there, leering in at me with those burning eyes, the next it was gone. The silence that descended was almost as deafening as the creature's guttural whisper. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, too terrified to move, too traumatized to even breathe. The creature was gone, but the feeling of dread lingered, a cold, suffocating weight in the pit of my stomach. Section 9. Dawn's False Promise. Slowly, tentatively, dawn began to break. The first light of day, usually a symbol of hope and renewal, felt like a cruel joke today. It was as if the universe was mocking my fear, offering a false sense of security. Grey light seeped through the cracks in the curtains, chasing away the shadows and restoring a semblance of normalcy to the room. Yet, the light seemed to carry a weight, a heaviness that pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. But the terror remained, etched deep in my mind, a chilling reminder of the nightmare I had just experienced. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a painful reminder that I was still alive, still vulnerable. The creature's eyes, glowing with malevolence, haunted my thoughts. I forced myself to get out of bed, my limbs shaky and weak. Every movement felt like a monumental effort, as if the air around me had turned to molasses. My body ached, a physical manifestation of the mental torment I had endured. The room seemed different now, tainted by the memory of the creature at the window. The once comforting shadows now seemed to hide sinister shapes, and the familiar creaks and groans of the house took on a menacing tone. The familiar comfort of my surroundings had been shattered, replaced by a lingering sense of unease. Every corner of the room seemed to hold a new threat, every shadow a potential hiding place for the creature. I went to the window, compelled by a morbid curiosity. I needed to see if the world outside had changed as much as my perception of it had. My hand trembled as I reached for the curtain, my breath catching in my throat. The street outside was deserted, bathed in the soft golden light of a new day. Everything seemed peaceful, normal. The birds chirped, and the trees swayed gently in the breeze, as if nothing had happened. But the tranquility felt like a facade, a thin veneer over something dark and sinister. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the creature was still out there, lurking just beyond my perception. The sense of dread clung to me like a second skin, refusing to let go. I knew that the dawn's promise of a new beginning was false and that the nightmare was far from over. Section 10. The laughter in the mirror. Turning from the window, I caught my reflection in the mirror hanging on the back of the door. My hair was a mess, my eyes wide and bloodshot. I looked pale, shaken. But that wasn't what made me freeze in terror. There, superimposed over my own reflection, was that grotesque grin. The creature's eyes, burning with cold amusement, stared out at me from within my own reflection. And then I heard it again, that low guttural chuckle echoing around me, seeming to come from within my own mind. It wasn't over, it was just beginning.